All right, we are here at my outdoor urban worm bag, and wow, we've got some great moisture on the lid there. And you'll notice we are still using bottles, and that is because even though it's fall here, it is the middle of November, we are still getting some heat waves. And you'll see occasionally there'll be a little worm on here, and I think that's because the bottles will sweat as they defrost and they get a lot of moisture on them. So I always check the bottles to make sure we don't have any worms on them. And of course, we had another little one right there that we'll just kind of get off. So I'm seeing a lot of worms all on the surface here, which is great. And last time we kind of were trying to fill this urban worm bag because we had harvested it and we got a huge harvest. So we put a lot of bedding in here and we put a lot of food. We also talked about moisture. And I'm sorry, I just got to stop right now because even though this is like fresh cardboard, looks like, because it's just kind of shredded, you don't see a lot of castings, there are worms crawling in and out of it. And that is because we kind of did like a layer cake of feeding here. We put down a bunch of damp bedding. It's the first time I'd used damp bedding in a while because, again, the transition in seasons from summer, which is our wet months, to fall, which is our more dry months. And we put a bunch of food in and we put more bedding on top. And then on top of that, I put a whole bunch of pumpkin innards from when we were making jack-o'-lanterns. And wow, there we go. It looks like we've got some right there. So this is going to be interesting because they obviously did not eat all the food. In fact, when we put the food in here, here's what we fed them. We fed them some lettuce and lettuce stalks, and then we dumped a whole bunch of food scraps like bananas, pineapples, carrots, tomato slices, strawberry tops, a whole apple, and then we added in some pumpkin juice and pumpkin flesh from that frozen chunk. And then because I couldn't get the chunk completely apart, that's when we added more bedding, and then we added that pumpkin chunk. So that's, I think, what we are seeing now. So I'm gonna dig my hands in here, and I am feeling just a lot of goop. Oh, this is really gooey, and they haven't got to it. It does feel just a little bit warm, not hot or anything like that. So this thing had probably heated up, and let me kind of mix it around here. Yeah, it's got a smell too. So clearly this went anaerobic right here in the middle, and the worms didn't really get to it. We are seeing some worms, but they were on the edge. So what I'm gonna do is I am really gonna mix this up, and we are gonna make sure that smell goes away and that oxygen gets to it. Okay, here's some pumpkin too. So, oh yeah, pineapple. Whoops, thanks. Got to save from the executive producer. So this is good. I clearly overfed, and we are seeing what happens when that happens. And sure enough, here are some of the cranberries that everybody had been talking to me about, and they, when you squeeze them, definitely explode. So another thing that we noticed was 8 days into this, we still had no liquid going down through the bottom and into the mortar tray. But on the 8th day, we got a bunch of liquid down there. Not a whole bunch, just kind of, a little bit of pooling, and I just couldn't really understand why that would be, why it would be 8 days without anything down there, and then all of a sudden we got something. And then I remembered we had been having dry weather, and then all of a sudden it just kind of sprinkled and rained for 3 whole days. So it was way more humid than we are used to, and certainly than this urban worm bag was used to. So I think that's when the urban worm bag here just kind of released a little bit of moisture. And because I had been putting in dry bedding the whole time and really kind of regulating the moisture and kind of getting used to that, when I added in that damp bedding because the weather was dry and everything, I think just that pumpkin juice along with the rain just kind of made that happen. Right down here, I've got another pocket of food and stuff, and yep, same thing. We do have some worms in here, and this is some pineapple, and you can see they're in there, but it has been 12 days, so you would think that some of this would already be gone. So what ends up happening when you feed your bin or overfeed your bin, they're going to go to the foods that they like or that they can get to quickly, and they're going to eat those. And then what happens to the other food is it's just going to rot. The microbes are going to get it, and then it can go anaerobic. It can get too wet. The air pockets can't get in there, and because the worms can't eat it fast enough, it will kind of almost ferment or rot. So the worms aren't going to go near it at all, which is why you don't really want to overfeed. Now, eventually, the worms will eat everything else, and then all those, bad microbes are going to get to the food as much as they can, and then the worms are just going to kind of eat towards the edges and make their way in and eventually get to all the food, and that's kind of what we were seeing there. But you can help it out by coming in here and just just kind of manually breaking it up, or even better, do not overfeed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all the extra food and put it to the side, and we're going to adjust our feeding based on what we're seeing here. And here's another interesting food. This was a whole apple that we put in here, and then we kind of broke it up a little bit, but you can see too, this apple is taking a long time for the worms.
All that food's having PTSD moment back when we had that pumpkin.
Oh yeah, that was bad.
That smelled so bad.
What was this banana? Ugh. Oh, check that out. This was a banana, and they are all inside of it right there. I do smell just a little faint smell of like banana extract or maybe banana alcohol. Check that out. I just undid one of the cardboard tubes and all kinds of worms all inside there, which I just love seeing them. You can see even inside their bodies, you can see the pieces of food that they've ingested. Really cool, really cool. This is one of those things, it's like the napkin is pure. It's not even, I mean, it's a little dark, but there's no grains of castings in between or anything. And it just kind of shows how much it can get matted down and stuff. So this is a little unusual. This is the first time I've seen this. And I think just kind of a few things added to create this kind of a mess that we have in here. And that was I used damp bedding, which I hadn't been using, and we put a lot of food in. So I think what happened was things kind of got overwhelmed. We had a lot of food in here, and it just kind of sunk, and the moisture prevented air from flowing into it. So a lot of this food went anaerobic. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix in some dry bedding here before we even start our feeding. So we'll go in with some dry bedding. And I'm not going to put the old food into the feeding zone. I'm just going to kind of let it spread out. But this dry bedding will help to kind of give some structure to, these top 4 inches here and help it to just get some oxygen. And certainly me mixing around is going to help as well. And that will prevent any kind of anaerobic activity. And then we'll get back to the kind of microbes that the worms like. And I'm also going to add something else in here as far as microbes go. And if you watch my last video where I went to the headquarters of WiggleBrew, you'll know that I went to a local nursery and bought one of their bottles. So I thought if they've got all these great microbes in here for the plants, why not just kind of spray some in and add it to the worm bin and use the microbes that they have in there in my worm bin. So you're going to see me spray in some WiggleBrew in each of my bins. All right, I think I'll add in a little bit more dry shredded cardboard. And if you've seen any of my videos, you've probably heard me talk about the 12-sheet crosscut micro shredder that just kind of pulverizes corrugated cardboard and just turns it into these tiny, tiny pieces, which I just love because they have a lot of surface area. The worms are able to get to them, and they just break down super quick in my bins. And by super quick, I mean compared to leaves that you would put in, stuff like that. So there we go. We've got a pretty good mix in these top layers here, and I am just going to put just a little bit of food, and I'm going to spread it out real good. I think that last time where I put the pumpkin right here, it just really wet down everything and kind of sunk in. So we'll just go in with some of our standard food scraps from the week, and we'll just dump it in like that. And this probably seems like a whole bunch of food, but it's really not, because this urban worm bag is pretty big when you compare it to like a Rubbermaid tote or some other worm bins that are out there, or even my Vermi hut or outdoor worm bin. And I do have a lot of worms in here, probably over 5,000, maybe close to 8,000. So they'll be able to attack this. And this is nothing compared to the last feeding that we had here. We've got a lot of blueberries and strawberries and things like this. This is a broccoli stalk. This will go pretty quick, as will the lettuce. And then we're going to see some of these orange peels and tangerine peels here in the next few weeks, but they're not going to have a lot of water to release. So I think this is going to be a pretty decent feeding, and it's spread out so it won't heat up. So we'll still go in with our amendments, and this is just some worm chow, dried pantry items that I have, just another way to feed them and to get rid of my expired grains. And then something I did want to show you is we have a Keurig, and we just kind of take the individual Keurig cups and put them in here as we make coffee, but I'm just going to kind of dump some of it off here for you, and I'll show you what ends up happening. We end up getting kind of like a clump of coffee like this in it because it kind of molds and that kind of thing, because I just dump it in here and let it sit out. Occasionally I'll put a lid on it if we're going to be away, or if I can start to see the mold visible on the top. But what I do to kind of get it right back down to, the loose grounds that I can shake is I'll put a lid on it like this, and big thing is make sure that's real tight, and then I just kind of shake it up. That's what happens when you don't have a tight lid. But once I shake it up like that, that usually will break down that big kind of lump that was in there, and it did pretty well. And then it's back to just crumbly, grainy coffee, just like that. So just a little tip for how I store my coffee. And then finally, we'll go in with some of the eggshell grit, and they absolutely love this. I'm doing a time lapse right now, and the worms, again, within 2 days, had gone on top and took down all the eggshell grit. And they use those tiny little pieces of eggshell in their gizzards to help break up the food. So this is good to see. Every time I come in here, it's not always perfect, and I had not seen this in the urban worm bag. So I think I got a little ahead of myself with trying to correct the moisture all at once by putting the damp bedding in and then putting in that pumpkin that was very juicy. And that combined with those 3 days of rain just kind of led me to an anaerobic condition. So I think I know the way forward. A little bit smaller feedings. We'll go back to the dry bedding and then see how the bin reacts. So I did have a lot of odds and ends bedding to kind of put on top, but I think I'm going to stick with a shredded cardboard just to kind of go back to what me and the bin are used to. So we'll dump this in there like that, and then we'll spread it around to make sure all the food is covered up just like that. I think we can put a little bit more in here. Yep, there we go. And then I think between the humidity that we're going to get, because it's supposed to rain in a couple days, and the water bottles that we're putting on here, I think we're going to have just enough liquid in here. So the worms will be able to attack the food, and they were. It looks like maybe if I was in here 3 or 4 days earlier, I would have seen a lot more food without the worms attacking it, but they were actually getting to some of that anaerobic food that we were seeing. So we'll check on this in another 10 days and see how it's doing, and maybe even do a harvest. So I hope you're having a great day. I hope your worm bins are doing well. So happy vermicomposting, everybody. Take care now.